The days of our military sending 70 cents of every dollar to the United States are over.
What if I told you that America is not Canada's big protective brother at all? In fact, Canada is secretly the real boss of North America and could bring the entire United States to its knees without firing a single bullet or starting any war. Everyone thinks the US is this unstoppable giant, 10 times the population, 15 times the military budget, and the world's biggest economy. But geography doesn't care about any of that. Canada holds 3 insane geographic superpowers: water, energy, and the Arctic, that literally keep America's drinking water, electricity, economy, and entire future hostage. One move and Canada could cut off water to 40 million Americans, black out entire cities, double gas prices overnight, crash America's steel industry, and lock the US out of the most valuable trade routes and resources on Earth. America thinks it's the king, but the truth is, it's completely at Canada's mercy. And most people, even most Canadians, have zero idea how powerful they really are. This video is going to completely destroy everything you thought you knew about North America. By the end, you're going to see both countries in a way you've never seen before. You need to watch until the very last second because the final advantage is the most dangerous one, and it's about to change the world forever. Let's dive in.
This is Canada. People always think that America is like Canada's big brother, always protecting it. But the real story is completely different. Even though the US has a population 10 times bigger than Canada's, a military budget 15 times larger, and the world's biggest economy, geography works by a completely different logic. It doesn't care about military power or economy. The truth is, Canada has 3 geographic advantages that could bring America straight to its knees, without firing a single bullet, without any war. The most interesting thing is that most Canadians themselves don't even realize how much power they have, and that's exactly why they've never used it. Make sure to watch this video till the end, because today you're going to see North America from a perspective you've never seen before. Let's start with the most dangerous power: water. Canada holds 20% of the world's total fresh water, more than any other country. Now, think about how dangerous this is for America, because the Great Lakes system, which provides drinking water to around 40 million Americans, flows through Canada. Picture it like this: Lake Superior, Lake Huron, Lake Erie. All of these lakes are connected to Canadian territory. Not only that, the St. Lawrence Seaway, which carries this water to the Atlantic Ocean, passes through Quebec. And it doesn't stop there. The Niagara River, connecting Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, is right on the Canadian border. The Detroit River, linking Lake Huron and Lake Erie, is also on the Canadian border. And this isn't just about drinking water, it's far more serious. The Great Lakes system isn't only a water source. This water also powers hydroelectric plants that supply electricity to millions of Americans. It's the same shipping route that carries iron ore from Minnesota to steel plants in Pennsylvania. Meaning, if Canada ever decided to control the flow of water from its territory, it could shut down America's steel production, cut off power to major cities, and trigger the biggest water crisis in US history. But here's what terrifies Pentagon planners the most. America couldn't do anything about it. You can't just invade Canada to secure water rights. The two countries share a 5,500-mile-long border, longer than the distance from New York to London, and much of it runs through wilderness that would make Afghanistan look like a parking lot. In short, the entire American industrial heartland depends on water that comes from a country America can neither control nor conquer. This is one of geography's biggest truths. Canada holds America's most vital resource hostage, and the US can do nothing except make sure Canada stays friendly. But this is just the beginning. The real game is in energy. Today, Canada supplies America with 20% of its total electricity, enough power to run the entire state of California, all coming from Canada. And here's where geography gets even more interesting. This power comes from hydroelectric dams in Quebec and British Columbia, and all that energy flows south into American cities through a handful of transmission lines, crossing at specific border points that geography itself has predetermined. This means Canada could, with just a few flip switches, plunge the entire northeastern United States into blackout. But it doesn't stop there. The real danger lies in energy. Canada is currently America's largest oil supplier, sending around 4 million barrels a day through pipelines that run from Alberta to refineries in Texas, Illinois, and Oklahoma. Now, here's the geographic choke point that should terrify every American. A large share of this oil flows through a single pipeline system known as Enbridge, meaning if Canada ever shut down the Enbridge pipeline, US gas prices would double overnight, and the entire American economy would literally grind to a halt. But the real fear starts here. Canada's entire energy infrastructure is designed to flow south, and the biggest reason for that is geography. Half of Canada is covered by the Canadian Shield, a massive granite formation that creates natural barriers, funneling all energy southward toward the US border. And now, we come to Canada's most dangerous geographic advantage, one that almost no one talks about: the Arctic. Yes, because of climate change, Arctic ice is melting rapidly, opening up new shipping routes in the Arctic Ocean that could soon become the world's most important trade highways. These new sea routes could fast-track trade between Asia and Europe, especially the Northwest Passage, an Arctic shipping route that connects the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean and passes entirely through Canadian territorial waters. This means Canada has the power, in the future, to monopolize Asia-Europe trade and shut America out of the world's most lucrative shipping lanes. But the Arctic's geography doesn't stop there. The real game is in resources. Beneath the Arctic Ocean lie about 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and 30% of its natural raw reserves. And most of these can be accessed by land only through Canada, which means, as the ice melts, Canada will gain exclusive access to some of the largest untapped energy reserves on the planet. And this Arctic region isn't just about oil and gas. It has already become the new battlefield for global power competition. Russia is rapidly building military bases along its Arctic coastline. China has invested billions of dollars into Arctic shipping, and for America, the Arctic's strategic importance is now more critical than ever. But here's geography's biggest truth. In this entire Arctic theater, Canada holds unmatched geographic leverage. Power not just to control energy, but also to outmaneuver the US in shipping and military strategy. Canada has the chance to become the gatekeeper of the Arctic, a position that could quietly make it the most powerful country in North America, without firing a single shot. But Canada's real trump card isn't just the Arctic, it's minerals. Canada holds massive reserves of lithium, cobalt, nickel, and rare earth elements, all critical for electric car batteries, solar panels, and wind turbines. As America shifts toward renewable energy, it is becoming entirely dependent on these Canadian minerals. Here's where geography adds another dangerous twist. Most of these minerals are located in Canada's extreme north, remote regions that are nearly impossible to defend or invade. China understands this all too well, which is why it has already invested billions of dollars into Canadian mining projects, buying mineral rights and building infrastructure that would allow these resources to be shipped directly to Asia via Arctic routes. This means Canada could one day wake up and realize it holds the materials that power the entire global economy. And the scariest part for America, Canada doesn't need any US permission to sell those minerals to China. And if America ever tried to pressure Canada, for example, to stop exporting minerals to China, Canada holds an economic arsenal that could bring the US to its knees. Canada could simply cut off water, energy, and Arctic access, and America would be left literally powerless. So next time someone says that America protects Canada, remember, geography tells a very different story. Canada controls America's water, its energy, its Arctic access, and its critical minerals, which means America's future is in Canada's hands. And perhaps Canada itself doesn't fully realize it, but geography never lies. In the game of global power, the one who controls the resources controls the future. America may have the bigger military, but Canada has something far more powerful: geography. If you always thought of Canada as just a friendly neighbor, maybe now you'll think again.
Everyone thinks they understand Canada's east coast, and that's exactly why they're wrong. They see aging towns, higher unemployment, lower incomes, and assume the story ends there. They see outmigration and federal transfer payments, and conclude decline. But what if those numbers are hiding the most important geoeconomic transformation in North America? What if the region everyone dismisses is quietly sitting on the ingredients for the next strategic pivot of the Western Hemisphere? Because beneath the surface metrics of population and wages lies something far more powerful: geography, energy, minerals, food systems, trade corridors, and military positioning converging in one place. Start with the narrative everyone repeats. The Atlantic provinces, Newfoundland and Labrador, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick together hold only about 2.4 million people, less than Toronto alone. Young workers have historically left for Alberta's oil fields or Ontario's manufacturing base. Average household incomes lag behind central and western Canada. Newfoundland and Labrador's unemployment rate has hovered around 10 to 12%, well above the national average. From a surface-level macroeconomic perspective, it looks like periphery, but macroeconomics often mistakes scale for significance. And in geopolitics, scale is rarely the decisive variable, because economic gravity does not just follow population, it follows resources and choke points. And Canada's east coast sits at the intersection of both. Look first at food security. The Grand Banks off Newfoundland were once among the richest fishing grounds on Earth, supplying cod across Europe and North America for centuries. When the cod fishery collapsed in 1992 due to overfishing, tens of thousands of jobs disappeared almost overnight. That collapse shaped the global perception of the region as a victim of resource exhaustion. But ecosystems adapt and markets shift. Lobsters, snow crab, and shrimp surged in value. The Atlantic lobster fishery alone is now worth over $1 billion annually, and snow crab adds another billion. Nova Scotia became the world's largest exporter of lobster, while New Brunswick dominates North American snow crab markets. The lesson is not nostalgia for cod, it is resilience of marine capital. In a world where protein demand rises and fisheries elsewhere are strained, the Atlantic shelf remains a strategic biological asset. Shift from the ocean surface to beneath it, and the scale expands dramatically. In 1979, the Hibernia oil field was discovered roughly 315 kilometers offshore Newfoundland. Estimated reserves exceeded 1 billion barrels. The engineering challenge was extreme. Icebergs, massive waves, brutal storms. It took 18 years and $6 billion to build the platform, a 1.2 million ton structure engineered to withstand iceberg impacts. Production began in 1997 and transformed Newfoundland and Labrador's fiscal landscape. Today, offshore fields including Hibernia, Terra Nova, White Rose, and Hebron collectively produce roughly 200,000 barrels per day, generating billions in annual value. But here is the critical escalation. This production is not the ceiling. The Flemish Pass Basin east of Newfoundland contains approximately 1.2 billion barrels already discovered, with broader offshore basins estimated to hold over 60 billion barrels of oil equivalent in potential resources. For context, Alberta's oil sands reserves are roughly 170 billion barrels. That comparison places Newfoundland's offshore in the same strategic conversation. Not equal, but relevant. In energy geopolitics, relevance shifts bargaining power, and oil is only one axis. The Scotian Shelf off Nova Scotia historically supported the Sable Offshore Energy Project, producing natural gas for 2 decades before depletion in 2018. Geological assessments continue to identify untapped potential in surrounding basins. Meanwhile, New Brunswick's Bay of Fundy hosts the highest tides in the world, up to 16 meters, creating enormous theoretical tidal energy capacity. Hydroelectric power from Churchill Falls in Labrador provides over 5,400 megawatts of capacity. Add emerging offshore wind zones and hydrogen proposals, and the region transitions from fossil-heavy legacy to diversified energy frontier. In an era defined by energy security and decarbonization simultaneously, that dual capacity matters. Now connect that energy story to minerals. The Labrador Trough contains some of the largest iron ore deposits globally, with annual production between 17 and 23 million tons. This iron feeds steel mills in North America, Europe, and Asia. Voisey's Bay in northern Labrador holds one of the richest nickel deposits ever discovered, containing nickel, copper, and cobalt essential for electric vehicle batteries. Rare earth elements at Strange Lake, particularly heavy rare earths like dysprosium and terbium, represent potential alternatives to China's dominance in global supply chains. These elements are critical for wind turbines, electronics, and defense systems. Pause and observe the pattern. Offshore oil for energy security, nickel and cobalt for batteries, rare earths for clean tech and military systems, iron ore for industrial manufacturing, fisheries for food resilience, potash in New Brunswick for fertilizer and global agriculture, gypsum and salt in Nova Scotia for construction and infrastructure, Prince Edward Island producing 25% of Canada's potatoes while generating roughly a quarter of its electricity from wind. This is not a narrow resource base, it is a diversified portfolio aligned with 21st century demand. Yet resources alone do not create power. Location multiplies resources. And this is where the East Coast's underestimated leverage becomes visible. Look at a globe rather than a flat map. Newfoundland is the closest point in North America to Europe. During World War II, St. John's served as a crucial Allied convoy assembly point in the Battle of the Atlantic. That was not accidental. It was geometric inevitability. The shortest transatlantic air and sea routes arc northward. Undersea fiber optic cables connecting North America and Europe run along this corridor. Geography did not change when the war ended. It simply waited for the next strategic cycle. That next cycle may be Arctic. As Arctic ice recedes, the Northwest Passage becomes increasingly navigable for seasonal shipping. Any vessel transiting between Asia and Europe via Canadian Arctic waters must pass near the Atlantic Gateway. That positions St. John's as a potential refueling and resupply node. Halifax already offers one of the largest natural harbors in the world, ice-free year-round. St. John, New Brunswick, operates as a deep-water year-round port, linking Atlantic Canada with the northeastern United States. Infrastructure such as the Confederation Bridge connecting Prince Edward Island to the mainland reinforces integration. Ports are not just commercial facilities, they are leverage points in global trade networks. Layer onto that the military dimension. The North Atlantic is regaining strategic prominence. Russian submarine activity, Chinese maritime expansion, and renewed NATO vigilance reposition. The Atlantic is a contested security corridor. CFB Halifax houses Canada's Atlantic Fleet and represents the country's largest military base by personnel. Surveillance, anti-submarine warfare, and maritime domain awareness operations converge here. Energy infrastructure, undersea cables, and Arctic approaches intersect within operational reach of this coastline. When trade routes, energy assets, and military positioning overlap geographically, that geography becomes strategic. So why is this region still perceived as economically marginal? Infrastructure constraints. Labrador's mineral wealth is remote, with limited rail and road capacity. Offshore oil faces high production costs due to harsh ocean conditions. The population base is small, reducing local fiscal capacity for large-scale capital projects. Extraction without efficient transport limits realized value. In economic terms, the binding constraint has not been resource scarcity, it has been logistics. But constraints evolve. Federal infrastructure programs totaling over $180 billion across 12 years are channeling funds into trade corridors and port modernization. Halifax is receiving terminal and rail upgrades. Private mining and energy firms are investing in access roads and development studies. The infrastructure gap is not closed, but it is narrowing. When logistics improve, stranded assets become active assets. Now connect all of this in sequence. Global energy volatility increases demand for diversified oil and gas sources. Decarbonization policies increase demand for nickel, cobalt, and rare earth elements. Food insecurity heightens fertilizer and fisheries value. Arctic warming alters shipping patterns. NATO recalibrates its Atlantic posture. Each of these macro trends independently raises the strategic value of Canada's East Coast.